start now. This is being recorded, so we'll push it out. AFP will put it on their homepage. MPW will push it out. I don't know if CNA is or not. Most likely they will. And but we are recording this, so everybody knows. We have a Q&A function at the bottom. I'd encourage everybody to use. Matt's corralling everything, curating all the questions and comments. But on the Q&A, you can upvote, and that makes it a little bit easier for Matt to corral them. And then at the 12:30 mark, we'll take the questions. But if I can begin with, again, thanking AFP Colorado, Colorado Nonprofit Association. Remind you, this is being recorded. Don't worry about the mute button because we've already muted it for everybody. And then I'd like to just welcome the panelists, Maggie, Patrick, Kay, and Matt, I'll welcome you too. Hello. So if you want to unmute panelists, we can start off by, I think at this day and age, it's perfectly okay to ask people how they're doing and just give us a minute about, how you're each dealing with this crisis. And I'll pick somebody. Let's start with Patrick. Patrick, you want to give us a minute about how you're dealing with this?
Thanks, John, and good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining the call. We really look forward to these continuing. We learn as much from you as hopefully we're able to offer from our experience. And yeah, John, thanks for asking. I guess I'm counting this as the end of really the third week that I feel like I've been in full response to the COVID crisis in my community and across the world. And the past week, I've really just been focusing on connecting to the people I care most about. It's hard to live in isolation, so I've been reaching out a lot to friends and family. And it's been great to have people be very receptive to that and just trying to talk about life in general and adapting to this new normal. But all in all, I'm very grateful for my health as well, and just grateful to be a part of the community.
Maggie, you want to share some thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much to Matt and John for inviting me today. Last week was really wonderful and informative, and it's been amazing to see the community come together and share information and experiences. It's all making this a little easier. So thank you so much for organizing. Yeah, doing well here, healthy. Everyone in my family is healthy, so that's kind of the first checkbox. But overall, doing well. Like Patrick said, really at the end of the third week, it was a quieter week this week, work-wise at least. So, that was enjoyable. And, today it's a nice day outside. I repositioned my desk at the beginning of the week, so I look right out a window now and, just counting the small things each and every day that are helping us get through.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think echoing Patrick and Maggie's gratitude to Matt and John for setting this up the past couple of weeks. I feel like holding the space for everybody last week was really informative and super helpful at that time, and continues to be. And I think just to shout out our small team's technological advances over time. At the last slide that you will see today, we've gotten a Facebook group dedicated to this webinar series so that any of the questions we don't get a chance to really tap into today or feel left kind of hanging, we're going to transfer them to a discussion tab there so that you all can join us and we can keep the conversation going. You can post other questions. It can become kind of like an online support group, right, throughout the week so that we continue to roll with the conversation. Personally speaking, I feel like, again, at the end of the 3-week mark, which is like that 21-day magic window, build a new habit type of mantra you hear all over the place. And I feel like I got to the end of this week faster than I have the prior two, right? So it starts to feel like even in this time of uncharted waters, I'm starting to find my footing, and it feels a little more normal. And so I'm hitting a groove a little bit better, connecting with family more consistently, making time for my immediate family, and just finding those new routines and rhythms that I think is what is critical for all of us and part of why we're all here together sharing space as well.
Great. Matt?
Thanks, John. Yeah, I echo everything that everyone said. It's kind of a day-by-day thing, and I think also looking at the long-term view that we'll get through this eventually. And it's eating well, exercising, meditating, taking it easy, not watching too much news. And then a friend, Mike Gelman, I'll have to give him a shout out, but he had a Facebook post that said, every time he starts, his chest starts to tight, he can feel it, and he has trouble breathing, and he thinks he's got the disease, and it happens like twice a day, and then he gets a distraction like from the dog or something else, and it all goes away and he forgets about it, and he's like, am I being a hypochondriac, or is that just a Jewish thing? And I'm like, oh, it's both. I get that all the time. So, I'm always looking for those distractions to get me away from thinking I actually have the virus.
Great. Well, let's jump right into it then. Maggie, first of all, would you mind telling us what Florence Crittenton is all about and sharing with us what you guys do?
Yeah, of course. So Florence Crittenton Services is a nonprofit. Our office's location is right at Alameda and Zuni in the Valverde neighborhood. The organization itself has actually been around for over 125 years in the Denver community. We used to be a maternity home, and about 35 years ago, we pivoted and partnered with Denver Public Schools to become a dropout prevention program for pregnant and parenting teen moms. So today, the campus has a Denver Public School System high school. So it's a public-private partnership between us and Denver Public Schools. So DPS running all of our education for our moms, and then the nonprofit provides funding and wraparound support for their whole family, for mom and child. So we have a 10 classroom early childhood education center. We have a clinic on campus that provides about 85–90% of their prenatal, postpartum, and pediatric healthcare needs, as well as dental, social emotional support, mental health care services, parenting education, post-secondary preparedness, and now more than ever, basic and emergency needs support. So really comprehensive wraparound care to get mom through to graduation, to get her child ready for kindergarten, and both on a path of success and self-sufficiency.
Great. All right. Well, what we'll do is I'll ask the first question, and we'll kind of rotate through. Oh,
John, I just want to give a reminder to all our audience and all the people that just joined to use the Q&A function when you have questions or you have comments. So we're going to go through this series of questions with Maggie, but please ask your questions. And then there's an upvote feature. So just remember to, if you like that question or it's the same question that you would have asked or similar, hit the upvote. So that's that thumbs up, and then it'll pop up to the top. So we'll probably have a lot of questions today, and we really encourage you to ask questions, and we might not be able to get to all of them. But again, comments, questions, how you're feeling about these things. And then as you see them pop up in the Q&A, as an attendee, please hit that upvote if you really like them. And those are the ones that kind of pop to the top that we can quickly answer. So, and keep them coming. And then in about a half an hour, 20 minutes, we'll just start getting to the real Q&A part of this. So. Cool.
All right, first question. Let's see if someone can move the slide deck. Thank you. So first of all, Maggie, you have a team of 5, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So tell us what it's been like as leader during this time with that group. And, particularly I can only imagine virtually, because I've always been the type when I had a team, I like face-to-face contact all the time. I can't imagine how trying this is, but share with us, how you guys are dealing with it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's certainly added a layer of challenge to our team dynamic. My team is really collaborative. We all work really well together. Let's see, about 4 of my 5 team members all sit in really close proximity to each other when we are in the office. And so kind of losing that organic connection piece is, certainly trying to recreate that virtually has been a challenge for sure. But I check in with my team every week. We have a touch base meeting, half-hour touch base meeting every Monday. I have one-on-one sit downs with my team, half-hour throughout the week. And, those still continue. We moved, encouraging everybody to connect via video conference when they feel up to it. So it's been great to kind of see faces and continue that connection. But it's certainly been a challenge. Actually, one of my team members just gave birth to her 3rd child 2 days ago, or yesterday, excuse me. So there's been some celebration and excitement, but it's my database manager. And so distributing that workload, we kind of started that division of labor back in January, and now doing all of that virtually has added, like I said, another layer of complexity. But because we had such a strong team dynamic and because we're used to working together and being collaborative, I've actually found it really easy for us to be able to move to that space, and everybody's giving each other grace. And, you know, I certainly try to lead with that and you know, make sure we're all giving each other the space that we need to adjust to our workloads. This week was spring break for Denver Public Schools, so a lot of our program staff were offline. And so I really encourage my team at the beginning of the week to take time, you know, just keep your calendar updated. But if you're taking a walk in the middle of the day, or, you know, if you're going to log off a little early or log on a little bit later in the morning, just update your calendar, and we'll respect that space for each other so that we each have the flexibility we need in our days to get our work done, but also to take care of ourselves.
That's great. And so I would ask the same of Patrick with Boys and Girls Club of Metro. You know, Patrick, how are you dealing with your team?
Really exactly the same. We've adjusted very quickly from our group meetings. We've got a team of 11 people that focus on development specifically. And so we have our standing meetings. Those have gone uninterrupted. They're just in a new format now. And then we have our leadership team is meeting daily. The vice presidents and chief executives have been meeting daily. And then we've actually also had our executive committee of our board is now meeting every 2 weeks to help advise us and guide us in the process. Great.
And I can just say from a personal standpoint, sometimes I just tell Matt that I'm catching up with the Kardashians. I can't be bothered. All right, next question. Tell us about your communication to stakeholders, Maggie, and I'll put this to Patrick. Patrick, if you want to go first this time, that's great. But, you know, just how are you, and stakeholders, I think is a good word, because in fundraising parlance, you know, it's easy to say donors, prospects. Now I think development shops are tasked, and Maggie and Patrick, you know, tell me if you disagree or if you think there's more nuance to it. But I think development shops are getting a lot more broader on communication at this moment. But
yeah, I hope I'm assuming of the 100 or so participants, there's a lot of kindred spirits out there when I say that I've accepted director of development, vice president of development, manager of development, whatever the title, only to come and find out after joining that marketing and communications was also included in that title. So that's a pretty common thing, I think, for all of us. And so, yeah, John, thanks. I have the privilege of also overseeing the Boys and Girls Club's communications. And so exactly, we very, very quickly realized that in a crisis situation, we're always dissecting our personas. I think all of us are, you know, your major donors, your loyalty donors, your volunteer core, your memberships, your subscribers, and so forth. But wow, in a situation where information is changing hourly, sometimes hourly, literally, we've really had to become very disciplined in the way that we are looking at each one of those personas and being extremely thoughtful about those communications and how they should be done, whether they're a Zoom conference call, a phone call, a group text or email to a group of people. And we're continuing to refine that. So it is, I think it's a positive thing, and I think it's going to have long-term benefits. It's really forced us to think very, very, very carefully about the exact messaging we want to put to each one of our personas.
Great. Maggie, your thoughts?
Yeah, so this is certainly a, you know, dynamic question, stakeholders being really broad. You know, you certainly have our moms and their children and their families, our one group of individuals that we're needing to stay in contact with, certainly our donors, our community partners. You know, I mentioned Denver Public Schools is probably one of our biggest partners to help us achieve our mission, and that is a massive entity that we are needing to stay in contact with. You know, lots of other partnerships, community partnerships. Denver Health runs our campus clinic, so just lots of organizations to stay in contact with across the community. And then obviously more in my scope, certainly our donors and supporters of our organization, whether those are individuals or companies. You know, I fall back on just old habits too, and just kind of retooling how that comes out. So, you know, thinking about who needs to know what do I want them to know, feel, and do at the end of that communication, and really just making sure that anything that I'm sending out, whether, you know, that's a conversation with a donor, whether that's a mass email that's going out to everybody in our database, just being able to clearly outline what it is, the goal of that communication is. You know, we figured out pretty early on, and certainly with the help of our development committee and some communication folks in that group, you know, that we really didn't want to add too much to the noise, right? Like, everybody knows to wash their hands at this point. Everybody knows not to touch their face. You know, what value can we really add to the conversation at this point? You know, what's unique about what's happening at FlowCrit, that they can't find that information anywhere else. And so really leaning into the value that we can add to the people who are interested in our organization and who want to know how our moms are doing, and you know, focus on those aspects of communication rather than kind of large overtures about what's happening. You know, no one's looking to FlowCrit services for all the answers to the global health crisis, but they do want to know what we're doing to support some really vulnerable folks in our community. So that's really what we've been focused on, and the response has really been great with that.
Can I ask a second part of this question that you know, I've been working with clients and others. Did you have a plan, and are you working from a plan, or are you feeling like a plan is probably, you know, not going to be as helpful because it's almost a day by day?
Yeah, it's funny you say that. So we, you know, the last day of school for Denver Public Schools was the 13th, was March 13th. And then that following Wednesday, well, that following Monday was the first day that my team really went remote, and most of our team went remote. And then that Wednesday we had a development committee meeting, and I should also add, we had an event that was scheduled for April 16th. Our signature fundraising event was scheduled to be at the Children's Museum on April 16th. So, you know, a lot of my focus in those first 2 days was, how are we going to make this event virtual? What are we going to do? Okay, we're going to roll out this series of emails, and we'll do our virtual silent auction, and we'll do this great appeal, and, you know, everyone's going to tune in. And honestly, by the time I called in on Wednesday morning, that was all really irrelevant and just really felt tone deaf. You know, this is, you know, we are in a crisis, and this crisis is manifesting itself, you know, in terms of health, in terms of, you know, financial stability, in terms of, you know, resource depletion. And, you know, by the time I was able to connect with the folks on my development committee, it really rang true that wasn't really something that was going to fit with what we wanted our messaging to be. So like I said, it's more falling back on that culture of philanthropy and that, you know, donor-centric, we are one community moving forward model. You know, that's the plan, right? And then it's every day making sure that whatever we're sending out is relevant, is consistent with the tone that we want to execute. And you know, that's the plan.
I was really impressed though that you had a COVID button on your web page, and then you go there, you have individual items that people can purchase on behalf of your clients and the moms. So it's great. You know, Kay, I would ask, and Patrick, both, to a little about what we talked about last week about planning. How do you balance the planning with dealing with the day-to-day? Both have value, but sometimes it can feel like, what's the point of planning? So I'd love to have, Kay, would you mind chiming in a bit of that, because you've been through some crises in your schools?
Sure. I think that, you know, having the long-term vision that you're holding, like, and identifying, and then doing a critical analysis and saying what is still obtainable and is it essential, right? Like evaluating it through the lens of what is essential to continue to maintain and push forward our mission, our vision, and our work, while also then evaluating it and saying, what do we need to adjust for given the new circumstances and situations? And you may find that you have to trim a lot more than you thought and adjust, and things are going to change daily. So I think it's how you balance, and that's what you do as a leader anyway. You balance the tension between the long-term and the current day reality, and how you walk those two closer and closer together given the reality in which you exist.
I love that.
Flexibility is the key.
Yeah, but the balance between long and short term. Patrick, real quick, do you mind just adding a note or two about that balance of planning, but then being flexible, dealing with the day-to-day?
Yeah, we call it the assess, execute, and plan continuum, and it literally has to be done simultaneously. I feel like, and so in the first 3 weeks, that really was a simultaneous balancing of you know, assessing the urgency and then executing on it, but then still trying to plan. just literally as of today, and again, as a reminder, I'm with the Boys and Girls Clubs, and so we follow the public school schedule. Finally, today, we were able to just pause for a moment and take a peek over the fence into the summer. And so we put together short-term needs for the summer programming, what critical decisions have to be made to launch a minimum amount of programming for the summer, and then the medium term, which is what if all of those short-term plans go awry because the CDC or the state or the city or the county changes the rules. So adaptability is the is the norm and the driving force every day.
Great. All right. Next question. Stewardship. And tell us about your, how your ongoing stewardships are, or how are you talking with donors? Are you soliciting right now? How are you engaging volunteers? So Maggie, do you mind talking about those efforts?
Yeah.
With FlowCrit as you.
FlowCrit, yeah.
Okay,
Florence,
it is appropriate to call FlowCrit.
Yes. Florence Crittenton is a mouthful, so FlowCrit is a little more phonetically appealing. Yeah, I mean, stewardship and engagement is at the corner of my overall development plan. And so it's actually been really exciting to see some of the ideas that my team has come up with. That first week I felt, certainly overwhelmed with, the event and how we were going to move that forward, and communicating with all of our sponsors and our vendors, and being a part of our campus leadership team, figuring out how, being a part of conversations about continuity of programming, but to see my team just really jump into this mode of like, okay, how are we going to move some of these really cool, creative things that we are doing that we would normally be doing into this new space. And so, the soliciting piece is interesting, and it was a very robust conversation with, over the course of several conversations with board members, and certainly my boss, our CEO and president, about what that should look like right now. And we haven't done any hard asks just yet. John mentioned our website certainly has the space to give, and we're very clear about the things that we're in need of right now. We depleted our wipes down. Everybody who's buying up all the toilet paper, people are now buying up all the baby wipes because they can't find toilet paper. And so we're really transparent about the areas that we're really trying to find funding for and continue to bolster. But we haven't made any hard asks yet. And I saw this question in the chat too, in the spirit of transparency, I think it's fair that, the organization is in a good place financially. We're able to continue to pay our staff, and, the move from a financial and technology and infrastructure standpoint to, virtual operations and continuity of programming has, not without bumps, but certainly been something that we've been able to achieve thanks in, huge part to the generous support of our donors. So that message has been really great to give. But, we aren't in a position of desperation at this point, for sure. So it's about how we can invite people into what's going on at FlowCrit, whether that is a donation or whether it's some sort of virtual volunteer opportunity. We launched a Literacy in the Living Room Facebook Live series where we have volunteers joining at 10 o'clock every Tuesday and Thursday to read a story for, certainly our moms and their kids who are at home, but anybody else who either just needs an uplifting children's book read to them or something for their small child to do for just a moment. But, we have an option on that website too to leave just a message of positivity and support for our moms. And that's really received a lot of great traction. And it's just really heartwarming to see all the comments and positive energy that the community is sending into our moms. So, it's certainly a call to get creative, but figure out, what does engagement look like if that's not a donation. Certainly we do have people reaching out and giving money, and we're putting those dollars to really good use, but, it's more than that at this point. And, I've just been really blown away by the creativity of my team to move some of those initiatives into this new space.
Great. Patrick, do you have anything to add?
I don't. Very well said, Maggie. Thank you.
Great. All right. I think, do we have another question, or are we ready to jump into, events? We are going to talk about events.
And I just want to put a shout out for everybody to remember to If comments or questions, put them in the Q&A, keep them rolling. We got some great questions we'll get to in a little bit. But keep them flowing, and any comments on things that you're working on or doing. So thank you.
Right. So Maggie, you mentioned your event earlier. I would say, big events in April, you canceled it essentially. Is that correct?
Yes.
And then I'm suspecting, did you direct a lot of those dollars that were going to go to the events, just ask people to say, would you rather just treat this as donations?
Yeah, so I sent my first email out to sponsors. It would have been like Thursday. It was the day before the last day that students were on campus. So it would have been March 12th. And it essentially, at that point, we hadn't decided to cancel the event. So it was, I'm aware that this is happening. This is unfolding in our community. Stay tuned. Most importantly, we will continue to keep you updated as we make decisions, and we're thinking about you and what your impact will be at FlowCrit, no matter how this kind of pans out. And then by the next week, by the time Monday rolled around, we had certainly decided that the event would not go forward as planned. And so I reached out again to our sponsors and essentially gave them the option of continuing their support, and was very clear about how we were mobilizing our resources to continue to deliver programming to our moms. So they could keep their support, basically convert that to a donation. They could defer it to next year, so they could defer that sponsorship commitment to next year's event, or they could, receive a refund, which is fair, since all the sponsorship benefits and things that we had promised were not going to look like they had. And again, just another way that my team has been really creative about, trying to figure out how we can, offer some more acknowledgement to our sponsors that we, like I said, weren't going to be able to deliver on the things that we had promised had we had an in-person event. We've got a board member queued up to, a board member of a sponsoring company queued up to lead literacy in the living room on the day that the event was going to happen, and we'll be able to give her company a shout out as a sponsor. We're putting all of our sponsor logos at the bottom of any email correspondence that we're sending out. And really calling out that these are people who were going to sponsor the event, but have chose to continue their support, and how appreciative we are of that. So again, more creativity, and the response was really great. We had a ton of people continue their support, which was really wonderful. Really, really, really wonderful to see.
Great. Well, Matt, I don't know if you want to do questions, or if you want to, we can take a brief minute I think Patrick's got some events that he talked about last week, but I'm just curious if we can just take a real quick minute. Patrick, and I've been looking at I've been doing a lot of reading, trying to find out where things are landing. If you have events in June, July even, I know Boys and Girls Club probably does, and Maggie, maybe this question goes for you too, but are you guys anticipating, are you waiting till next week? Are you thinking this is going to spill into June, that you want to start pivoting, doing a virtual event or anything like that?
So at this point, we just decided the event's not going to move forward as planned. I was actually really excited about this event. And event fundraising is probably my least favorite form of fundraising, but it was, the standard kind of gala at a hotel ballroom. And this year we had moved it to the Children's Museum, and they've been really wonderful to work with, and it was going to be more fun and interactive. And so I was really looking forward to it, actually, and I'm really bummed it's not happening, but it'll happen next year. So that's essentially our narrative. The two individuals, or I'm sorry, the individual and then the company that we were honoring with our award that we do every year, we'll do that next year. And so at this point, just, no more events. Our fiscal year ends at the end of June, and as far as what it's going to look like on April 16th, when we were the event, kind of that flexibility piece, like I don't know. We'll kind of see where we're at as a community in the next week and a half, and we'll make that decision probably a couple days beforehand, if we send out an email, and if there is some sort of hard ask in there.
Yeah, I think this is such a fluid time that if any board, development committee, or whatever is asking development directors what's the plan for June, July, I would say stay tuned.
Yeah,
Patrick,
exactly.
Do you have anything to add to that? Yeah. Patrick?
Oh, sorry.
No, sorry.
Yeah, the first wave of events, we have a lot of corporate events, and the first wave, they canceled, they called us to postpone. We then postponed all of our events, and as a placeholder or kind of a teaser, everybody tune in on April 24th, because in this forum right here, Jen Darling will be talking, and I don't know about all of you, but I, for one, am wondering what Children's Hospital Foundation is going to do with their epic gala, which is scheduled in September, because that's, you know, kind of the big Titanic, and at least in the Denver metro community.
Let's not use the word Titanic.
Yeah. Well, so what we did is we are just avoiding using the cancel word as much as possible. So we put out an announcement that we were postponing our May Gala. We are definitely looking at a September date. We're cognizant of the Children's Hospital's phenomenal success, and we are leaving ourselves open. The good news is that all of our major gala sponsors said yes, absolutely. We are fully committed to the financial piece. So the money is in for the most part. And so we're looking at the September date as, we hope, kind of a celebration of returning to some form of human connection. And that's what we're hoping for. So it'll probably be less of a fanfare gala and more of a return to, you know, that joy of human connection. So stay tuned and let's see what Jen says on April 24th.
Great. All right, Matt, do you want to take us into questions?
Yeah, let's do it. Great questions, and keep them coming, please. I got some terrific ones here. I'm going to start with this one from Sarah Jackson, and I will. I'll take this to Patrick first. How do I navigate the feelings of guilt knowing my organization has a healthy cash reserve, and yet I still want to apply for grants, knowing eventually our donor base will stop giving as much?
Thanks, Matt, and thank you, Sarah, for that great question. I think what you're describing is literally, just from a human standpoint, survivor's guilt. And the Boys and Girls Club absolutely feels that too. I have turned, and we at the organization have turned to some of our top funders to kind of model our attitude and behavior around that. If we look to the Anschutz Foundation, if we look to the Colorado Trust, the Denver Foundation, Mile High United Way, Buell Foundation, some of the big funders in our city, there is the temptation to rush into the epicenter of the disaster and try to, you know, be that sort of savior. But each one of those organizations retreated a little bit and very thoughtfully processed, how are we going to look to the long-term effect of this global pandemic? And so I think we can model our behavior after them, Sarah. I think that it is okay. In fact, maybe we even have an obligation to look inward at our organizations and say, are we ready for this long-term journey? Is our vessel sort of in our craft sort of safe and battened down? And that includes having resources that we can both spend immediately on our immediate response to the crisis, but also project long-term. So I think it just shifts the conversation with our funders to say, can you help us today, for those funders who have the tolerance to do that, in pivoting our organization to meet today's urgent needs? And can you help provide a backstop for when we return to what I've been characterizing as the new normal? And it's okay to feel survivor's guilt, in my personal opinion, but I don't think it should paralyze any of us from moving forward in fundraising.
Great, thank you, Patrick. Maggie, Flow Crit, it sounds like it also has some cash reserves. It's doing well. Anything to follow up from that, from Patrick's comments, or anything additional?
No, that was great. I mean, certainly my boss and I, you know, we talk about the long term a lot now, you know, because we are, you know, good this fiscal year and we're solid. And I guess just beyond this fiscal year too, you know, the organization has a phenomenal finance committee that keeps us in top shape. But certainly looking forward into what giving is going to look like for the next 6 months, the next year, really the next 2 years, as we see these market fluctuations, as there is a call to philanthropic dollars, and you see a lot of that moving around now. You know, what is that going to mean when we apply for grants in another year or so? And so I think I think there is a balance too between, and like I kind of mentioned earlier, I think the fact that we are in such a great financial position is a wonderful story to be able to tell our donors. My boss and I split up our kind of major long-term monthly donors and reached out to them and said, you know, thank you so much. Like you you are just as much a part of this as anybody who's on the front lines at this point. You know, it's because of your generosity that we're in this position and that we're able to deploy and mobilize so quickly to continue supporting our moms. And I think that that message will really bring them along into what the next iterations of our organization looks like for, you know, like I said, the next 6 months, 12 months, 18 months.
Great, terrific. Thank you for that. Here's one I accidentally put in answered because I'm getting all these birthday wishes. So I'm gonna give this to Kay. She has experience in a lot of experience in retreats and meetings. I'm working with an organization that was supposed to have a staff retreat next week. They are postponing their retreat, but I mentioned perhaps they could still do a virtual staff retreat later this month to stay engaged and keep up morale. I'd love to hear some ideas for virtual retreat activities, team building, and goal setting. And that's from Shauna Peterson. So Shauna, thank you for your question.
Yeah, absolutely. And Shauna, I think it's a fabulous question. And I think it's a chance for us to get outside of our own boxes and really consider how do we leverage any of the new apps or applications, website platforms that are coming out right now or have been around in existence, but we've maybe been afraid to like inch our toes into. And I think doing a virtual retreat is completely possible. I think it really depends on how engaged your team is and if they're willing to maybe do some team building activities and exercises ahead of the actual time when you guys converge on a platform like Zoom together, right? So it could look like you're doing you divide into teams and you do individual TikTok videos, and the various groups that have the most hysterical ones or whatever, like then get bonus points. I think that there's also a platform called Coggle, which I'll set up a link for on the Facebook group. And it's a platform I've been using recently with some of the groups I work with to do virtual brainstorming. So it really allows you to use different colors, shapes. You can drop in links, pictures, whatever you want, but it allows for a space where you can all work together, almost like a Google Doc, and actually do brainstorming, which would facilitate team development of goals in a nice, fluid manner. I think there are some other ideas that are percolating. I'd love to turn it over to anybody else on the forum who's considering ideas, but this will definitely transfer to the Facebook group where we can drop resources in.
Great. Thanks, Kay. Patrick or Maggie, any thoughts on virtual retreats? Are you doing that? Are you seeing your organization or any others do that?
I'll jump in real quick. Thank you, Kay. Those are great answers. I am also looking for ideas. So out to the rest of the group, please do use the Facebook page. I am kind of a dinosaur when it comes to this. What I've observed is that on our all staff Zoom calls, man, the chat room just explodes. I am just in awe at the pace with which most of our staff can communicate through that chat room. I can barely keep up. So any tips you have would be fantastic. Only general advice that I was given and that I am following is to use this opportunity to differentiate and to empower and delegate. So I have been assigning task forces and small teams because it's so hard to provide leadership guidance from such a distance. So I've been empowering smaller teams. And so when we do come together as a group, we break those teams up into just 3 to 5 people who can report in on their specific activities. And it gives people that sense of empowerment and delegation that's really powerful. And again, I see this as a long-term benefit because I tend to be one of those sort of, I'd rather do it myself than train someone else to do it. This situation is forcing me to really ask my team and their partners in the organization to work together more effectively.
Great, thanks for that, Patrick. Move on here.
Oh, wait, real quick.
Oh, go ahead, John.
I just want to add, I've been seeing this happen. I mean, I've been doing it with friends and family, but I think it is just as appropriate for workplace to have a virtual social hour. And there's something about, if you're on Zoom calls all day and email and Slack and everything else, I think it's very effective. Just take an hour to decompress and figure out your medium, but just have everybody just chat. I think it works wonders.
Great, great. Yeah, virtual social hours, virtual happy hours, all the rage these days. Uh, so the next question here is from Wendy Stewart with Cara Technology Association. Welcome, Wendy. Thanks for your question. And this is from Maggie, directly to Maggie. How are your students getting their education needs met today? Any hardware or software needs they might have today?
Yeah, so, I mean, our moms are so resilient in so many ways. And, I always draw inspiration off of, their ability to kind of, move with what comes at them. And it's no different right now. But, we were a pretty virtual campus before all this because, our moms get 6 weeks off for maternity leave. And, if their child's sick and can't come to our early childhood education center, then they have to stay home. So our moms were pretty well equipped. They all had Chromebooks. We had to do a little technology distribution and distribute some hotspots. But like I mentioned, Denver Public Schools is our, our partner in delivering their education. I know our early childhood education center is trying to move to some virtual content story time with their ECE teachers. So I really would love to be a part of that, to see what, virtual Zoom story time looks like with a bunch of toddlers. But, we can see it even on the Facebook page when we post those literacy in the living rooms. Just yesterday, I mean, you guys should go check it out. One of our preschool teachers did a reading and she was dressed as Spider-Man, and she had texted all of the moms in her classroom. So they were all tuned in and they were all commenting as Miss Sherry was reading the book. And that connection is so important for all of us. And it's been incredible to see how technology has kept us together in this time.
Great. Thanks, Maggie. Next one is from Rebecca, and a stewardship question. And I'm going to send this to Patrick because he has a bit of experience in this realm. And since stewardship remains important, I'm curious to know if any of you heard of anyone having success doing a Zoom call with donors, individually or a group of donors, or in the same vein, creating a Facebook group, which I can let others answer this question, creating a Facebook group for donors to connect virtually as well as for the nonprofit to share funding needs.
Yeah, so thanks for the question. And I know it's annoying, but I'm going to throw the question back out to the entire milieu. Please, as people are testing this, by all means, publish it in social media and on our Facebook page and bring it back to these forums. I'm looking for great ideas too. Our Director of Leadership Giving, Ben Fiskus, is having Zoom coffees with donors. I think that's going really well. The only experience I've had so far in the last 3 weeks is with a couple of program directors and leaders in a couple of our major funding organizations, and then our executive committee. And I'll tell you what, that was 100% attendance at that executive committee meeting. So the positive side is that Zoom seems to increase participation.
Great. Yeah, quite a bit. Maggie, are you doing anything in terms of this area, either Zoom meetings or for stewardship, or any hearing of any Facebook groups for donor engagement?
Yeah, not yet. This year we launched kind of a lunch and learn series. I really hate the phrase lunch and learn, but that's what it is. And it's been really successful. It's been great. It's a small, intimate group of donors that we invite to campus and speak on a specific topic. And it's been wonderful, and we've had great engagement. And so I think our next one is scheduled was supposed to be in April. It wasn't anything that we had sent out definitive invitations for, luckily, but I had been giving some thought to what that could look like from a virtual perspective this week. And I think that there could really be some success with that, obviously using Zoom and other, conferencing platforms to connect with staff. But, to the extent that donors are open to that, I think that's fantastic. But it's been a lot of phone calls, emails, some text messages on our front right now. Great.
Thanks, Maggie. John, are you seeing any with clients or others how are they using digital for stewardship right now?
Yeah, I mean,
social.
Stewardship, I'll call it cultivation, one and the same, that engaging folks. And I will say that I've been impressed with, one client of ours that had a campaign committee ready to go, a great meeting a month ago. And then within a few days, this whole crisis, this pandemic occurs. But what Patrick said was very telling. We had 100% participation. People were very engaged. It was a little somber. I mean, because these are tough times. But at the end of the day, people were honest on the call and all that. So I think there is an opportunity to engage people at a level we hadn't engaged before. So
yeah, no question. Okay, do you have any thoughts or comments? And there's also a question about from Shauna, where our Facebook group, if you could just mention that again.
Sure, absolutely. No, I think everything that was captured there was really salient and important and spot on. And the Facebook page it was on the last slide, and I can share that again. I'll actually put the information because panelists and hosts can't actually type into well, that's not true because I responded. I did answer your question, Shauna, and or Sarah. The link is on the bottom of the last slide, but I'll type it in as well. It's facebook.com/groups/COVID-19MPW. And it should be connected. You should be able to find it. And if you can't right now, we'll make sure to connect it to the MPW Strategies Facebook page itself. We'll get a connection up there. So if you're connected to us on Facebook, you'll be able to easily find access to that group as well. But otherwise, I am chatting the website address, and the hyperlink will be on the last page of the slides that go out after the broadcast.
Great, thank you, Kay. And then I'm going to get to two more questions here. Three more. One very quick, can you do breakout groups on Zoom? I don't know the answer to that. If anybody knows in our group or any of your panelists, you can. Case nodding your head, you can do breakout Zooms on Zoom. So this is from our anonymous attendee, but a very great question. And I'm going to pose this to Patrick. I think we can all agree that there will be great human suffering ahead, and that fundraising dollars will go to causes that alleviate the suffering as well as they should. In this environment, what strategies can the performing arts undertake to survive? Really good question. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that question. Just as a bit of background, my pedigree is in the performing arts. I was a classical musician for 15 years as a professional, and then when I entered into the nonprofit management space, it was through the performing arts on the East Coast and then here in Colorado. And one of my closest mentors is Dan Ritchie, who was the longtime chairman of the Denver Center for Performing Arts. And it is well documented that the arts and culture are so vibrant to any community. And so in a pre-COVID world, it was all about joy and celebration and just enlightenment. And I think in a current and post-COVID world, it is very much a part of healing. And so I would lean back on the fundamentals of what the culturals do for our community at large, and less about necessarily what our specific organization does in terms of our glitz and glamour. It really, I think, is a fundamental conversation with funders about needing to heal. Last week, I mentioned it. If you Google grief and Harvard Business Review, you'll find a very powerful article on how we cope with grief while simultaneously responding to a crisis that's still unfolding. And I think the cultural arts play a huge, huge part in that.
Thank you, Patrick. Beautifully said. The arts, no question, are so important in healing. And thank you, Patrick. The arts are so important in healing, and really also providing that outlet. And I don't know if John or Maggie, you have any other thoughts on that, just in terms of performing arts or cultural institutions and fundraising at this time.
I saw something on Facebook the other day that said, remember now, like, if your escape, whether you're listening to music or even if you're watching TV or watching a movie, that's the arts at work. Like, remember that you leaned on artists in your time of need. And it's also back to, what value can you add as an organization right now? So it may not be appropriate for you to make a hard ask, but it's totally appropriate for you to, continue to share work. I'm from Chicago originally, and the Art Institute is doing some really great stuff with continuing to showcase the work in their museum. And people will remember that too. I mean, people will remember, God, it was really great to, have that. We're thinking about our art therapist on staff. We're thinking about having her do some sort of doodling, journaling, painting exercise online. And, even if that doesn't come with the hard ask, people will remember that you were there and you were there in a really unique way.
That's great.
I
Great.
just want to
Okay.
actually, yeah, I wanted to jump in on that because it was Maggie's paralleling a thought I was having, which is, there are a lot of foundations out there who already love to see cross collaboration between organizations when they're looking and evaluating submissions. And I think this is a great time, if you are in the performing arts, to even look to your local schools to reach out and coordinate, because speaking to the art therapy point, there's a place and a space where our kiddos, and I keep thinking about our youngest kiddos, our guys who don't know how to process this. They're going to process it through play. They're going to process it through art. They're going to process it through music, through script writing. So building those bridges now with especially our early ed and even older ed, right? Like K-12 spectrum, building those bridges between the art organizations and our educational system to really bring that back and write those grants, reach out to find that funding, because it's going to be critical for how the next generation moves through and processes their understanding of what they're experiencing now.
Very well said. Go ahead,
I just
John.
want to add something that this is 20 years ago, but it's stayed with me throughout my whole career. I was helping a performing arts center in Topeka, Kansas, and I was also helping a food bank. And one day I went to the food bank and they were saying, we're the food bank. We're a thumb in the dike. We're just stemming this short-term thing. But look up at the road at that performing arts center. They're really changing people's lives. And I'm not kidding you. The next day or two, I started working with the performing arts center there. And they said to me, yeah, we're doing art, but we're not feeding people down the street. And so I think the idea is that, you can't have a scarcity mindset. I think donors, they certainly want to support social services, but people also know that long-term, we're a society that values culture for our own well-being and brain. So I don't think we should ever fall in this trap of saying mine's not worthy or it's not worthy. And I would just caution against that mindset.
Great. Yeah. So well said, John. We have got two more questions from Joshua, and I want to really get to them. They're great questions. I think really important. The first, I'll just open up to whoever wants to jump on this. So it's a gift officers are connecting with older donors, and they're expressing loneliness and fear and anxiety, as you can imagine. How would you keep this conversation going? Focused on the mission, but still show that empathy to these donors that have this loneliness, fear, and anxiety. Anyone? I'll call on one of you.
Yeah. No, thanks. I was just absorbing the question. Joshua, it's a fantastic question. So I've used the expression before about falling back on fundamentals. So think about for a moment, in the best of times, what we all know about major gift fundraising, that it is about relationship and connection, and it's about understanding the needs and the motivations of our constituents, right? We don't come at them with an ask, we listen to what their needs are. So I'm happy to offline with you, Joshua, about this, because I'd love to learn what you're doing. But what I'm instructing my staff and myself to do is that very same thing, is to still listen and to remember that it's okay to make a human connection first and to check in with them as a person first. How are you doing? Waiting for that appropriate moment where the conversation will pause and pivot organically on its own. So I guess my short answer is, don't be bashful or afraid about going there with the donor, and having faith that eventually, because of your connection to one another, the conversation will move back to mission.
Great.
We were talking about this morning. The Colorado Plan Giving Roundtable had a webinar this morning, and this topic came up, since your book of plan giving donors tends to be a little bit older in age, and what happens when you do get those folks on the phone and the conversation does get a little heavy, and if that's all the conversation is, they're going to remember that, and remember that you were there and that you made the call and that you provided that relationship and you were there in a moment where they were really vulnerable. But I would also add to really take care of yourself, because those conversations can get heavy. Don't feel like you have to bust through all of those calls in one day. Give yourself time and space to process, because people are dealing with some really heavy stuff, and you shouldn't have to shoulder that burden in the form of donor phone calls. But, whether you get around to actually talking about what your organization is doing or not, they'll remember that you called.
Great advice, Maggie. Take care of yourself. We're just fundraisers or nonprofit leaders, and we're on the front lines a lot, and we see a lot of things. So give yourself time. Give yourself time to process, no question. But it's all about relationships and building those relationships. So this is the last question for today. Last question. I'm going to do my John McLaughlin. I'll send it to Kate Alviama. How do you keep your teams going in this time when you're working from home and it's tricky? You don't have that office. What do you do?
Yeah, I think, again, it's falling back and it's figuring out how to set up your routines that existed in the life before, right? Like it's setting up rituals, routines, processes, check-ins. So even if it's setting in it 3 times a week, a half-hour Zoom call to just say, what are your priorities, right? Like, so we're going to start the week off. Tell me what the goals are so everybody has a space for accountability, right? Then the idea of the virtual happy hour is great, even if it's just a social hour. Bring your lemonade, bring your root beer, bring your Coke, bring your shot of whiskey and Guinness beer if you need, whatever, just come as you are, right? So you're walking that line. And same as what Maggie stated, I think that there's a place too where it's we function differently in this reality now. So acknowledging, owning, and paying respect to that and saying, if you need to take that walk in the middle of the day, if you need to be offline, if your kiddos are home, because they will be home with us now until the end of this school year. Yeah, oh my goodness. If they're home and you need to help them with their schooling, I think as a leader, you need to be open to saying what makes sense in this new reality, right? And the other important thing to do, set boundaries and make sure your people hold them for themselves and their personal sanity. Because someone who works maybe at 10 o'clock at night doesn't mean you are. And it doesn't mean you should feel beholden to responding to those text messages and those Slack messages and those pings and those whizzes and those buzzes, right? Help people set and maintain their own boundaries and feel okay in that. Absolve the guilt. I think that's the biggest thing we can do.
Great, Kay, thanks. Yeah, John just ignores my 10 o'clock at night messages. So that's how we function in our office. Patrick, Maggie, you both have some pretty big teams. Well, comparatively, real quick, what are you doing to keep your teams together?
Like I said before, just kind of trying to operate on a new normal, keep the things that we had in process. I think staying connected is really important. That first few weeks kind of reminded me, or the first few days of that first week reminded me of have you ever had a first day at a new job and you don't quite know what to do with your time or where to go. So I think, really, feeling confident that people are capable and that your team is solid and that they can run with things and, making sure that, they've got a list of things that they can do that's really varied, and I had my team kind of brainstorm that the first week, right? Maybe it's a book that you had bought that you just haven't gotten around to reading yet, about a specific part of your job. Put 30 minutes on your calendar to do that every day. Or maybe it's some data cleanup project that you haven't been able to do. Give yourself some variety in terms of projects that you can lean on. And then I think for me, being vulnerable has worked really well too. Be honest with my team about where I'm at. I did some home drops last week to our moms and, that was really tough for me. And, having to wave at little kids through the door and, that weighed heavy on my heart towards the end of last week. And I was, transparent with my team about that. So they knew where my head was at. And it invites all of us to be, to explore the human element of what is going on, which teams will look to their bosses, to their leaders to do.
Great, thank you, Maggie. We are at 1 o'clock, so I just want to be respectful of everybody's time. John, do you want to wrap it up for us?
You bet. I'll make it quick. First of all, I want to thank the panelists, Maggie, Patrick, Kay. Really appreciate you guys taking the time. It means a lot, I think, to a lot of folks out there. And also want to thank AFP of Colorado, Association of Fundraising Professionals, and Colorado Nonprofit Associations. If you don't belong to those organizations, you absolutely should. They're a resource hub, and they're great organizations. You need to join. And then also want to remind everybody this is a recording will be pushed out from MPW as well as on the AFP page. And then for next week, we have Shira Zimmerman that Matt will be interviewing. She's with Zim Consulting, and they do great they do grant work primarily, really good work in that space, which could be very timely for a lot of folks. And then finally, just go to our landing page to look up the upcoming ones. We have Jen Darling, I think, or no, Laura Larson with Stride Community Health Center, and then Jen Darling the week after that with Colorado Health Fund, or Colorado Children's Hospital Foundation. There we go. I got it out. Anyway, thank you all for joining us, and look forward to talking with you next Friday. Take care.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much.
Have a good weekend.
Good weekend.